Within a busy city, there was a garden that was tended by a gardener named Lily. The garden flourished with vibrant flowers and bushes and butterflies and insects. The garden was beautiful, and it was loved by everyone that walked by it. But one day, a storm passed through the city and destroyed the garden, leaving behind destruction in its wake. In the aftermath of this storm, the garden was left in disarray. Some flowers were crushed, other flowers were uprooted, and some of those flowers lost their vibrant color. Lily, undeterred by this devastation, got to work. She started to rebuild the garden, one flower and bush at a time. As days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, the garden began to look a little bit different. The garden began to regain its glory. Although this garden was being rebuilt, there seemed to be a patch of that garden that was still really difficult to prune and to make what it was again. There was a persistent weed that had taken root in this corner of the garden. No matter how hard Lily tried, that weed would not budge. The weed seemed to thrive. The roots of this weed had spread and impacted the flowers and bushes that were in contact with those roots. Despite her best efforts, the weed persisted, kind of like a plague that had entered the garden. It was a constant battle for Lily, who was also trying to maintain the health and beauty of the rest of the garden. She was working tirelessly to make sure that the rest of the garden remained beautiful. Over time, though, Lily adapted her gardening skills, finding ways to minimize the weed's impact while nurturing the rest of the garden. She sought help from other gardeners in the area, experimented with different treatments, and never lost hope that one day would come where she would overcome the persistent weed. Just as that garden continued to thrive and evolve, despite the presence of that weed, so did Lily's learnings. Lily's strengths were not just solely gardening. Her strengths lay with determination, adaptability, and resilience. Despite the constant presence of this weed, she refused to let it define the rest of her beautiful garden. Instead, she focused on the beauty that surrounded her, nurturing every bloom and tending to every single leaf without deterring away from it. She learned to be patient, understanding that healing the garden takes time and that setbacks are inevitable. She cultivated compassion, not only for herself, but for those that supported her, as well as compassion to other gardeners who are dealing with a stubborn weed. Most importantly, Lily found courage to face every day with optimism and the belief that she could overcome any obstacle, no matter how daunting. As the seasons changed and the years passed, Lily's garden continued to thrive, its beauty becoming a testament to her work and unwavering spirit. That stubborn weed started to fade into the background. The presence of that weed was no longer casting a shadow on the garden. Flowers began to bloom larger, casting a shadow onto the weed. Bushes grew larger, covering the weeds so that it wasn't seen. In the end, it wasn't the weed that defined the garden of lilies. It was the boundless love that she poured into every petal, every grass blade, and every living creature within the garden border. And so, as the sun set on the garden, Lily stood amidst the blooms. Her heart was full, and so was her spirit, knowing that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would always find strength to bloom.